So how do we get to this point where the sniper keeps dying? Well, here's the story. Earlier this week, I wanted to start it up again and get the engine to idle, and I was going to start taking fuel away from the idle because it's running rich. And here's the reason why I think. If you're new to my channel, this might all be new information to you. The last time this was on, it was on the dyno. I had Nye's racing engines in Muncie, and I built this engine. I sent him the heads, camshaft, intake, and all that. And we had dynoed it. First, he had done a pump gas tune with this, and it made like 741. And then the last time it was actually ran was before I put it in the truck. It was with an E85 tune. And this is that video. Now I made 785 on the 85. And then what we did, we simply took off the sniper, we set it over the side, so because the sniper could still control the timing, we put the blow-through methanol carburetor, made some more pulls. I asked him before we left the dyno, could you make sure you load back in the pump gas tune? Because I was gonna put gas on it when I put it in the truck, obviously, and that's how I wanted to run. I saw him messing with it, but I think by accident he might have loaded the E85 tune because it is insanely rich. At least at idle. I obviously haven't taken it in racing yet or nothing like that to see how it does it wide open. And what I mean by that is because I started pulling fuel out of at idle because I'm trying to get it. It's targeting at 14.2, but I turned off the air corrections so that it wouldn't correct until it's above 2,000 RPMs in case there's some kind of exhaust leak. So I strictly wanted to run off the base fuel map. So I kept taking fuel away, trying to get to the point where it would lean itself out. So when it first starts up, it's in the 13s, and because the idle air valve's opening and because the O2 won't let it correct because I told it not to, it's actually looking pretty good. But as that closes, it's actually really, really rich. So I took out approximately 30% of fuel, which makes me think, yep, it's probably the E85 tune. So anyway, that's what I was messing with, and I was doing okay with that. And then the sniper here decides, I've got my own plans, and it keeps dying. Now, here's why I say sniper, because I'm not entirely sure, and I'm gonna give you the whole scenario. It would just die. Now, this is not the first time I've had that happen. When it was on the dyno and Nye's had it, he said it keeps dying. And I've had other snipers, that's why I've got that other sniper set up over there, that have done the same thing, where it just be running fine, and all of a sudden it shuts itself off. And what I found, it was EFI stuff, so I started adding these, which I don't know if you can see it there. See that? That's a ferrite core, just to prevent some of the radio interference. And I've actually even added shielded wire and all that. And that seemed to have fixed it in my last unit that I owned. So I put it on this thinking that would be it. As you could tell from the video, it keeps shutting down. So at first I thought, well, it can't be the sniper. Let me check some other stuff. So what I did was, I'm using the sniper to control the MSD box. I want you to understand that. All I did was unplug my MSD box and plugged it in a different one. Because, just in case it's an MSD box. Nope, because I changed it, started it, ran about 30 seconds, and did the same thing, died again. And before someone says, you're not supposed to put the MSD box in the glove box, it gets too hot. I can promise you, because I'm actually using my heat gun, that temperature in that glove box is about 90 degrees. And by the way, it was like 100 when I was doing this. Hottest day of the year, 106 when I'm doing this testing. So it was about 90 or so degrees. Everything here when the engine's running is at least 120. The plastic connector, 120. So I don't know, how hot do you think this is? 120. So and I know people put MSD boxes up against the firewall. It's far hotter here than it is in that glove box. Anyway, so I changed the ignition box, did make a difference. So now I'm getting kind of frustrated, so I call my good buddy, old Scott Clark, and he's like, well, check your rotor phasing. Maybe it's out of rotor phasing. Because, and he's got a valid point with that, sometimes that can be off, and once it gets warmed up, it'll shut itself off. However, when I first fired it up last week, the first thing I did was make sure that the timing is verified. So you can go to your sniper, you can set the timing. I told it, put it at 30. And I come out here and it was like at 34 or 36, something like that. So loosened the distributor and moved it to 30, where it should be. Then the sniper, whatever it says for timing, is what it is. So I take off the cap, I look, I put it at 30 degrees on the balancer. It's exactly dead nut center. So it's not rotor phasing. So at this point, I'm super, super frustrated because I'm like, this piece of crap. Had enough of it. And look what I've got here. Because I told you, redundant systems on the truck. There's a blow-through carburetor, just waiting to go on. So I thought, I'm gonna switch it. You know what? And here's all my redundant systems. This is that Hyperspark. I thought, well, all I gotta do is plug in the MSD box to it, and then the MSD box, I can get it to control the timing because that's a programmable one, and we'll be good to go. And go ahead and warn you, no, you can't. You see these purple and green wires that come off that? You're used to seeing this if you got an MSD box. That Hyperspark is backwards. In other words, this plug, let me pull it back out so you can see. I'm so afraid to touch things for fear that they're gonna not work anymore. You see this plug? When you go to plug it into the Holley Hyperspark, that green's connected to the purple and the purple's connected to the green. It's backwards. So it will not work. So I didn't even bother plugging in to make sure that it wouldn't work. I just said, nope. I called MSD or Holley and they're like, that ain't gonna work. Do I know for sure that it's not gonna work? No, because I didn't try it. Several of you also know that I have the other Hyperspark, or Holley sniper system right here. So I thought, screw it, what I'm gonna do then, I'll unplug the control out of the Hyperspark and make it go to this sniper EFI computer that I've got to have here, have the RPM signal send a signal to this sniper so that it will fire, so that it will send its injector signal. In other words, this one would control the timing, this one would still work with the fuel. I did that, but I forgot to load the different ignition timing into this, so it was running like a piece of crap. So this one obviously has a different tune than that one as far as the ignition. So I didn't want to mess with it, got frustrated. But when I plugged it back in, started to back up, and it started running, and it ran really well. Like, it seemed like it was running for about 2 or 3 minutes and hadn't died. So at this point, I'm like, I got to get stuff done. I turn it off. Here's what's weird. I come back here to turn off the power on the truck, and I can kill switch underneath there. And here's what I find. It's going to look just like this. This is connected, and this negative, it's not. It literally looks just like that. The truck had been running for a while, not the whole time, with the ground not connected. And it's still to this day, I can't figure it out because you're like, what are these? This black wire here goes to the MSD box. That's its negative. This is to that other sniper unit, and that's to this sniper unit. The one that's actually controlling the fuel. That right there is a ground. This big fat ground wire goes all the way to the block. So I'm like, how is it the sniper getting its ground? It was disconnected. It should have shut itself off. How did MSD get its ground? It should have shut itself off. It still ran. I, to this day, don't know how that worked. So then I thought, that must be the issue. That must be the issue. So I tighten it all back down, does it? And so far, it seemed like it did. But I think I found something else. This is a longer video. I should have said, I found this. What you saw in that picture was the bottom mount for the starter. In the evening, about 6 o'clock, my wife says, you know what? Maybe you should air out the shop. Get some of those fumes out of here. It smells pretty bad. And I thought, well, shit, if I'm going to air it out, might as well start it up, see if I've actually fixed it. Because really the only thing I do is make sure that the ground one's connected, and then re-switch the stuff. I go to start the truck, it turns over, and it almost starts, and it doesn't. And I'm like, the tune's still off at the idle. I think because I've leaned it out so much that everything else is wrong. It's not getting enough pump shot to start. I go to hit the starter again, and it sounds like the starter is hitting the flywheel. And I'm like, what the hell? Maybe the old Bendix here got stuck in it. And that's when I get underneath the truck and it looks exactly like this. This bolt, which had a washer, by the way, was like hanging this far down. And this one is the bolt that goes into here. It was loose. The starter, I could literally move it back and forth. And I was like, oh crap. Because my first thought was, please don't be broke. And it was. I had Carrie, my wife, go buy a lottery ticket because this is the luckiest I'll probably ever be in my life. And if you've ever had this experience or know what I'm talking about, you know exactly how lucky I truly am. First off, in order to take this off, it's a pain in the rear because the truck has the header tube that comes right through the bottom here. So I had to pull off a header tube to pull this out. Fight to get this out, and I find this. Camera sucks at focusing. This is the bolt. And it's broke. And I know some of you right now are trying to put in the comments, that's not a starter bolt. You're right, it's not. Because I've used this same starter, this same bolt, and the last engine, and it started up I don't know how many times. It had way more compression. I actually used it in the one I've had this starter since 97. Used it in other engines too, a 406 had way more compression, no problems. And they always had regular bolts. This bolt, and it uses this bolt. Neither one ever had that. So I didn't think much about it, although I knew starter bolts are different. They've got that knurled in that kind of fits into that boss and holds it. But my biggest problem at the time was when I looked up in the block, I saw that this part of the bolt was still in there. And it's way in there. I mean, you can tell all the threads that's there. You're like, oh crap. This is gonna be a disaster, nightmare to get that out. How on God's green earth am I gonna get it out? Because I was thinking, well, I got left-handed drills, but drill bits, but where it is, it'd be so hard to get it out because the A-arm's in the way. I'm like, I just put this engine in, I'm gonna have to pull it just to get this thing out. So I thought, well, I'll just try something simple first. I got a little punch, and what I started doing was I'd hit this tip here and start pushing it, and it turned. It turned on the very first hit, and I was like, oh man, I think it's loose enough that it's gonna come all the way out. So I kept tapping and it kept turning. And eventually, after about an hour of tap, till I could get my fingers, I even tried needle nose pliers, it wouldn't grab the small part. Because you could tell it's broke up enough. It turned and I got all the way out. That's the luckiest I've ever been in my life. If you're a mechanic and you know what I'm talking about, this truly is one of your luckiest moments you will ever have. This bolt, as you can tell, is bent. What I think was happening is, with the sniper, and I can't really blame it entirely on the sniper because I don't even know entirely sure that it's fixed. What I think happened was the starter bolt broke, and it was just using that one to do it. And you're gonna say, well, you left it too loose. No, trust me, it was tight when I put it on there. I think what was happening, the power goes here, obviously. I think as the thing would lose, it would lose its ground connection, and somehow, I don't know, it somehow gave just a momentary interruption of power. Not necessarily to the sniper, but there's another power wire that comes off here that goes to my ARC control panel, which is the 12 volt switched power for the sniper. And I think what was happening, it was just not even a second, like a split second where it was losing power connection, causing the truck to die. Here's what I did. I didn't have another starter there, but I had the Camaro starter. So this is the Camaro's engine. It's still not in there because the truck's in my way. So I grabbed its starter, shoved it in, and by 9 o'clock, so it broke the bolt about 6, or when I found it anyway. By 9 o'clock, I had it back in there, back together, and fired it back up. I ran it for 10 minutes. It got up to 184 degrees, usually about 177, 180 is when it starts doing weird stuff. Like, I guess things just get hot enough and it would die. I ran it for 12 minutes straight and it didn't shut off. So do I think it's fixed? I hope so. If not, I swear to God, I'm gonna pull that distributor, put an MSD one in there, put the carb on there, and then I can go back to the sniper if I wanted to. But at this point, I think, knock on wood, it's fixed. Although I might have used every bit of luck I had with the starter. But anyway, that's been the week on the truck. Oh, several of you said, you not running breathers? I mean, you should run breathers. You're absolutely right. Because I want to show you over on this side. It's easier to see. There's also no baffles in here, so I've got to take off the valve covers. I had someone have my welder weld in a baffle underneath. I used to have a TIG welder, so I could do it myself. Because my TIG welder would weld sheet aluminum, not cast aluminum. And what's happening is this breather tube here, because there's a rocker, like especially on the other side, this one's like halfway in between. There's so much oil mist that's going everywhere. It literally is, if I have it aimed this way and you can see it, the speckles, it will shoot like oil fumes or mist out. It doesn't necessarily smoke, but it blows it that way. And might be because there's more piston to wall clearance because of the whole boost thing. It seems like it does have a bit more blow by, although it never smokes, but it sure does give more pressure out. Could be the boost itself too. But yes, this is going to be adjusted. That's the reason why these are on here. They're going to have tubes that go off to a catch can. I just haven't added it. I was just trying to get some of the other stuff done. But anyway, longer video, but I thought you might get enjoyment out of it. Maybe the sniper's fixed, maybe? Gotta hope so. You guys take care. One more note for you guys. I know several of you are probably going to say, well, the reason why the sniper stopped working was because the ground came off. I want you to understand that all I did was unplug the, back to this. I disconnected that connector and plugged it into that one, then plugged it back, then I disconnected and plugged it back into that one, the same with this connector. And then the truck started and ran for about 2 or 3 minutes before the evening where it breaks the starter. It was still running like that and running perfectly fine and hadn't died with that ground off. So it wasn't, I can't say that having the ground off was the problem, because it was actually running fine for at least 2 or 3 minutes while being warm, only because I plugged those two things back in together. It leads me more to think that the starter was doing something weird, that if it moved, it caused just a momentary pause or something in the voltage or something to the arc that stopped it. Because at that moment when I plugged those back in, it was working fine, but it could be that the starter was just frozen. I can't say that there was that ground being off that caused it. I know some of you are like, it's instantly the problem. You don't understand. It was running for at least 3 minutes and hadn't died instead of the 30 seconds that you saw with that ground off. Stumped me. So I don't know the answer. What caused it to do it? I've got a bunch of speculations. Right now, I'm just not even going to touch it because I'm afraid to even mess with that wire at all for fear that they will somehow not work anymore. I am going to make sure that I fully tighten down the ground from now on, and of course the new starter's on. But I wanted to say that before someone's like, it's because the ground was off. Because I still can't figure it out, but it was running. So, and fine for minutes. Once everything was all connected, starter and everything else, it ran for quite a while. But there you go.